With Year 9 Season 1 introducing a plethora of changes to recoil, attachments, and many other things, you need to know exactly how to control recoil in 2024. To do this, first you have to learn what every attachment does to control recoil better. First, let's go over all of the barrel attachments right now. The flash hider makes it to where you control vertical recoil easier. As you can see with no attachment, this is what the recoil pattern right here looks like. But if I were to attach the flash hider, all of those bullets would go down, making it slightly easier to control vertical recoil. The flash hider also takes away the flash whenever you shoot a bullet, which makes it a little bit harder for people to see you whenever you're shooting, which is also an added benefit. Next is compensator. Compensator takes away all of the horizontal recoil instead of the vertical recoil, like the flash hider. Due to the fact that it controls horizontal recoil, compensator is preferred for any console players, as controlling horizontal recoil is much more difficult for people on a joystick than on a mouse. But if you're on PC, flash hider is much more preferred because controlling horizontal recoil is much easier to do with a mouse than it is with a joystick. However, if you're using a single shot weapon like a DMR or a pistol, it doesn't really matter what place you're playing the game on. You want to be running muzzle brake, because muzzle brake reduces the overall weapon kick of single shot firing. Not because it's good for single shot firing in specific, but because it specifically reduces the recoil of the first shot of the bullet. So not only is it good for DMRs and pistols alike, but it's also good for weapons who have their first bullet very, very high, which is what this green bullet right here is, because it does reduce the recoil of the first shot. So you can use it on pistols, DMRs, or on weapons like Jaeger's weapon that might have a bit too much recoil for you on the first bullet compared to the rest of the bullets that follow. If you notice that you don't really need to control the recoil of any weapon, then you can go to suppressor. Suppressor doesn't actually help you with recoil at all. It doesn't do anything to the damage reduction or increase either. All it does is make your gun silent. Secondarily, it also makes it to where you don't have bullet tracers, and the hit indicator on people's HUD whenever they're getting shot completely goes away, which is why it's good for people who shoot through smokes like Warden or Glaz, so that you can't pre-fire them when they're shooting you through a smoke because you can't actually see where their bullets are coming from. Also, it's good for roamers who are trying to be stealthy like Vigil or Cav, because if you're trying to go for multi-kills, it means you can try to kill one person, and the other people that died to you won't know where you are, which is great for setting up multi-kills. If you don't want a suppressor though, but you still don't need to control recoil, then I recommend the extended barrel. As you can see right now, the base damage of Malusi's MP5 has 27 damage, but if I put on the extended barrel, it increases it to 30 damage, as you can see right here. Not only this, but there's guns that have terrible drop-off damage. Guns like the P90 on Rook. The P90 has such bad drop-off damage that if you know how to control the recoil, running the extended barrel is actually pretty viable, because then you won't have to worry about taking long-distance gunfights, which you'll be doing anyways because you have an ACOG and an ability that makes it to where you need to be taking long-range gunfights. So, which attachment you run is highly dependent on which gun you're running. But a good golden rule of thumb is on most guns, if you're on console, run the compensator. If you're on PC, run the flash hider. If you're running a DMR or a pistol, run the muzzle brake. If you're running a weapon with absolutely zero recoil, run the suppressor. Or if you're running something with high drop-off damage, run the extended barrel. But barrel attachments aren't the only thing that actually helps recoil. The scopes help recoil too. To show you this, I brought you into the shooting range with Ash R4C Hollow. I also have flash hider on, a vertical grip, and laser, for example. Now, because I'm less zoomed in than an ACOG, it's going to be much easier for me to control recoil because I'm having to pull down less due to the fact that my perspective is not as zoomed in as an ACOG. For example, this is my natural recoil control with just a hollow on. It's not too terrible. But if I were to try and equip an ACOG on this, it's not going to look as good. As you can see, I wasn't able to pull down as hard, and I probably would have shot over somebody's head with those later few bullets because the recoil gets increasingly hard. Whereas with the hollow, I was still pretty consistently on this white line, which is a little bit of what I was aiming for. This means that the harder gun that you're using to try to control, the less magnified of a scope you should use. So, for me, I should probably still just equip a hollow, or whatever type of red dot or reflex that I want to be able to use, because it's going to be a lot more consistent for me to control recoil that way. And because I'm much more consistently controlling recoil with something like a scope, it leaves a lot more room for me to be able to change my grips if I want maybe a faster movement speed or a faster reload time, and my barrels if maybe I want an extended barrel for drop-off damage or a suppressor. Now, for the R4C specifically, I like vertical grip and I like flash hider because the recoil is still pretty hard to control even with a 1x scope, and I'm an experienced player, so for you, I would still just run the vertical grip, but you get the idea. Having a less zoomed in scope makes it a lot easier for you to control recoil because your sensitivity is much lower and your perspective is much less zoomed in. This becomes an even greater issue when you look at the actual recoil of something like a telescopic sight, a 3.5 times scope to be exact. If I want to control recoil on a 3.5 times scope, this is what it would look like. That's still like pretty laser accurate for a DMR, right? But if I were to equip a holo, now let's look at the recoil control. I actually moved down, I was controlling recoil so much, and that's a much tighter spread than that was. We'll try it again. Way more consistent, and over longer ranges it'll become even more apparent that using longer scopes is way less advantageous at closer distances. So if you want to control recoil better, honestly, just using lower scopes is going to be the best option for you if you're trying to get laser focused recoil. Now, as you can tell, attachments as a whole play a huge part in recoil control. That goes for sights and barrels, but it also goes for grips. As you can see, the horizontal grip increases operator movement speed, which doesn't really help with your recoil, but it makes it a lot harder to control recoil if you're not running something like the vertical grip, which actually reduces the speed at which the muzzle moves upwards when you're shooting, which essentially is what the flash hider does as well. So, if you want to control the best amount of recoil, the vertical grip is always going to be the option because the angled grip and the horizontal grip don't actually help you control recoil at all. So again, if you want that laser focus accurate recoil control, always run vertical grip. Next up, let's talk about the laser side. Now, like I said, this video is to have the most optimal and easy to control recoil control as possible, and having laser grip actually will help you do that. To show you this right now, I'm playing Ela, a pretty hard weapon to control without a laser sight. Now, if you're going to actually be controlling recoil, you need to be ADS as fast as possible to take the gunfight as fast as possible to control your recoil as fast as possible. But without a laser, it makes it to where you can't ADS as fast. As you can see, this is me ADSing without a laser. And now this is me with Ela with a laser on, as you can see. ADSing is much faster. The reason that ADSing faster to take a gunfight faster is more important is because when you're un-ADS, you have no control over your recoil, as you can see right here. It just goes everywhere, so optimally you want to be ADS to control that recoil. So ADSing faster makes you able to control recoil faster, which is why if you want the optimal amount of recoil control, running laser on pretty much everything is going to be your best bet. Now, I will admit having a laser does sometimes get you killed, but that's not what we're talking about in this video. You want pinpoint laser accurate accuracy, and a laser is gonna get you that just a little bit faster. Now, this entire video we've been talking about attachments, but that isn't actually the only thing that can make you have better accuracy. Something else that can make you have better accuracy is actually your display settings, specifically your aspect ratio in combination with your FOV or field of view. Your aspect ratio is just how stretched and tall your game is. So right now I'm on 1610. This is what 1610 looks like. But if I were to switch to 4.3, this is how stretched the game would look like. Now, I will use this sometimes to have less recoil on holos, whereas 1610 will give me less recoil on ACOGs. It's all personal preference. As you can see, when I ADS with a holo, I have much more space in my scope than it would be on the scope of 1610. Having a wider scope allows your brain to have more points of reference in order to control the recoil inside your scope to be able to control recoil even better. But another setting that has an effect on your recoil control is actually your sensitivity. Now, I have a high DPI, so the sensitivity being on 6.6 might look a little bit weird, and I also don't have a multiplier. So no, I don't have a wicked slow sensitivity. It's actually pretty fast for what I do. But obviously having a higher sensitivity will make it to where you can control recoil a lot easier because it's much easier and quicker for you to pull down as opposed to having such a low sensitivity, at least in relation to what your game multiplier is. So if I stay on 6.6 right now, I'm able to control recoil like this. It's not a really fast sensitivity, but it's not really slow one either. It's kind of in the middle. However, if I got a way lower sensitivity, it'd be much harder for me to control recoil because I'd have to pull down much harder, just like this. I actually just pulled down on my mousepad as fast and as hard as I could, and it still went up, so you get the idea. Now, let's try to put it on something super fast, like 60-60. Now if I try to control, oh my god, now if I try to control recoil, I'm gonna go way down on complete accident, right? But once I get accustomed to it, I can easily just sit right here and control Ela Scorpion very easily. I actually overcompensate, but once I get, used to not overcompensating, it becomes pretty easy to control the recoil if I'm not completely brain dead. So that is just another thing that can have a huge impact on your ability to control recoil well in this game. Something else that has a huge impact on how you can control sensitivity in the game is literally just the gun that you're using. Now, me personally, there's some guns that I'm really good at controlling recoil at that you might not be so good at controlling recoil at. For example, the SMG-11. I used to main smoke back when I played competitive for years, so being able to control the SMG-11 was just naturally a part of what I needed to be able to do, which is why I'm so good at it compared to other people who might not be so well versed in a recoil-heavy weapon such as the SMG-11. As you can see, this is my recoil. As you can see, this is the recoil natively. It goes pretty high, and it snakes a lot too. And this is how I control recoil control. It's pretty easy, and you don't really want to be spraying with the SMG-11, or else you'll go up like I just did there. You want to be kind of burst firing, like this, or leaning and spraying. It makes it a little bit easier to control the whip of the SMG-11, but that aside, just find guns that you're really good at. I, for one, am good with short burst SMGs. That's why I specialize in the SMG-11. Or if I wanted to frag out on defense, I would actually try the P10 Roni, because I'm pretty good at controlling that recoil as well, especially when the 1.5 was in the game. I also naturally have a pretty good trigger finger, because I've trained it over many years. So being able to run DMRs with ACOGs is no issue for me, because I'm able to control the recoil. Because it's not really hard to control the recoil, especially when I'm really fast firing, kind of like this. For you, that might not be the case. You need to test what guns you're good with. Maybe you're better with something like Sledge's AR, which is one of the easiest to control weapons in the entire game. Then, running that would be very easy if you want to try to control recoil starting out. Test out different attachments, test out different grips, different weapons, different sensitivities, and just try to find what works for you, and that will ultimately make it to where you can control the recoil best. You can't tailor make it to what I'm telling you or any other content creator or pro player is telling you. You have to find out what works out for you. If you want to know how to do that properly, I definitely recommend the last tip in this video, which is finding a good warm-up routine that suits your benefits. If you want to control recoil very well, you have to also train different skill sets of your aim. For example, I'm really good at flicking to people. I can hit targets very well, but I suck at tracking, which can make recoil control not as good for me on a horizontal basis. So maybe I should train that and implement that into my warm-up routine, which might be different from your warm-up routine. But if you want a baseline warm-up routine that kind of works for literally everybody, I'll give you mine. First up, I like to warm up all scopes, because I don't know which scopes I'm going to be good with in the day, or what I'm going to be bad with in the day. And I play a lot of operators on stream for fun, so I warm up first with the 1x scopes. Now, I've been experimenting with a lot of scopes recently, the Reflex C or the Red Dot A in particular, but you should really start out with something that's reliable like the Hollow A. I do it on an easy to control weapon like the T5 SMG. I also do it with a vertical grip and with a flash hider, which makes it to where when I'm warming up, I naturally am just going to be a lot easier controlling recoil because I'm not really having to worry about controlling it in the first place. If you copy these settings right here, or change it to 120, up to you, and press begin, now you can begin to practice flicking on a 1x scope, which is what I do. I start here, I'll flick here, go, boom, 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 and I'll just sit here and practice my flicking for the day. As you can see, I'm not really all that warmed up as I should be, which is why having a warm routine is so important. But once you get flicking down, you're able to flick and control the recoil consciously onto a target, even if you don't know that it's there, instead of flicking and missing and having to readjust your recoil to get to the player. So let's say that I know a guy's here. If I'm good at flicking, I don't even need to control my recoil. That's a headshot every single day. However, if I flick and I'm off, I now have to overcompensate my recoil control to pull down even further than I would need to hit the target, and sometimes you'll even still miss like that, which not only makes it to where you have to overcompensate your recoil, but it makes it to where you're practicing controlling recoil way much and more than you need to, which will make you inconsistent in your recoil control. So make sure you have the basis down like flicking or like tracking. Let's say that I'm tracking somebody. Right now I want to hit him in the head, but I missed the first shot. Well, being able to control my side-to-side recoil makes it to where I can actually hit the target with my second shot, even if I miss, right? But if I was bad at controlling side-to-side recoil, I might miss, and then, I'm missing, I'm still missing, right? And then it just doesn't work out. So learning how to flick, how to track, and then hit the shot and control your recoil after you miss it, just like that, is very important if you want to have laser-accurate recoil control. Once you're done with that part of the warm-up routine, let's move on to step 2, which is practicing aiming head level. If you practice going around aiming head level, it makes it so where you don't even need to control recoil when you hit the target because you hit him with the first shot instead of having to maybe aim above him and then control your recoil down, or aiming below him and having to control your recoil up to hit his head. So at that point, you don't even need to rely on recoil control because you're just aiming at the right place all the time. As you can see, head level, crouch level, even prone level, you need to learn where to aim. So your crosshair placement is very important. Not only this, but when you're training and warming up your crosshair placement and your recoil control, you're going to be aiming head level. So if you're in game not aiming head level, you're practicing your recoil control and then implementing it at the wrong part of your screen, which makes it to where your practice is actually going to waste with your recoil control. So you need to start actually going into map trainings like this and practice aiming head level. Let's say, okay, I know there's a guy in the weapons maintenance room, right where I just was. I want to aim head level the entire time. I'm surgically aiming head level right now. So that way, when I see him, he's dead. Now, if he's aiming crouch level, I know I need to aim like this so that when I see him, he's dead, right? So you need to learn exactly where standing and crouched is so that you don't even need to rely on recoil control in the first place. The final part of the warm-up routine to control recoil perfectly is to actually go into an arcade. I recommend turning on only deathmatch and free-for-all. This will get you in actual gunfights. It'll get you moving like an actual player against players who are moving like actual players, which will actually help you implement recoil into your everyday life. The issue with trying to practice something like recoil control is you can practice all you want, but a lot of the times when you're in the heat of the moment, your adrenaline's pumping, it's 4-4 match OT and the bomb is down, you're not thinking about recoil control, so you're not actually implementing it. A lot of the times I'll catch myself practicing recoil control and then I go in game and it's all gone because I actually am forgetting to control the recoil when I have that adrenaline going and I'm very excited or very nervous as to what's to come next in my gunfights. You can completely get rid of this if you go into arcades and consciously think about your recoil every time you get into a gunfight, to make it to where when you get into an actual game, you're desensitized and you're able to consciously control recoil every single time you get into a gunfight. But with that out of the way, my name's Alka, and that is it for today's video. Check out this next video, and I'll see you later.